And I'm thinking, geez,
So
I never got a call
additions and
from Jim.
deletions,
And it just says not delivered.
We have one
I don't know
addition
why.
for sure, that would be the mining, or mineral, what's it called, obsidian, I'm looking for it.
Mineral rights request for work and order.
Okay, that's an
For
addition.
your mic's on. I'm gonna get your go button.
He's still shaking his head no.
It bites me all the time.
There you go. We're lit up.
Okay.
And then I'd like to point out that on the grant of easement for access and utilities, T-Mobile, Dave is in North Lake today, so he will talk about that tomorrow, so we'll just carry that one for tomorrow. There's no reason to have any real discussion on that one. Any other additions or deletions?
I have no other changes.
All right. Apparently, the BLM's running a little late this morning, so we'll go ahead and work on some of our other things. It's non-timed items on our agenda. And on our work session today, I believe everything except for one will probably be just discussion. So we'll jump right on down. We'll wait on the town of Lakeview. They're going to be here for 9:30, so we'll wait and have that discussion on the MOU with this museum at that time. Is Ann coming on the double eagle loan extension, Denise? Do you know?
That is my understanding. Do you want me to grab her?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, let's do that real fast while we're waiting on the BLM to show up.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Congratulations.
Maybe we need
She's on her way.
why don't we just go ahead and table that if the BLM showed up? So call her back later. Did you catch her? You caught her? Okay. So we've already come into session, Lynn. Is everybody here that would make it?
Yes.
Would you like to come up? Our 9 o'clock is Bureau of Land Management Mineral Withdrawal Briefing from the Lynn. This is a request of the Board of Commissioners for you to come in and give us an update after the meeting last night, and you give us an opportunity to maybe ask a few questions, and I will let you introduce the people involved.
Great.
And you can go.
Okay.
And this is Mike. Please say your name. Thank you.
Hi, Mike.
And this is Teresa Hanley.
Teresa Hanley, I'm the Associate State Director for Bureau of Land Management, Oregon, Washington.
This is Brendan.
I'm the district manager out of Burns.
And just before we get going, Denise, nobody from Harney County elected to call in?
Correct.
Okay.
We also have Tim Barnes in the back.
The Bond State Geologist BLM.
And I'm even with that district manager for the Lakeview district.
Welcome, everyone.
I know what you roll.
Okay, well, we had a very good public meeting last night. Very well attended, I think. Had a lot of interest, a lot of good comments from folks. They're very, very interested in what's going on. Obviously, this is it's a big effort. There's a lot to it. You know, the sage grouse plans that were just approved this last summer, late summer, were this was part of that recommendation. Was one of the decisions again recommended that we withdraw these primary sage grouse habitat areas, we call them sage grouse focal areas, for the mineral entry to protect the habitat for sage grouse. So we have, the Assistant Secretary has approved a petition and an application that we submitted to her, and the lands have been segregated now for a period of 2 years. I think they were segregated on September 24th was the actual date. And they'll be segregated for 2 years. It will expire on September 23rd, 2017. And during that period, we're going through a NEPA process. We're going to look at this. We're doing a mineral potential report for the entire area. It's about 10 million acres across 6 different states. Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana. And USGS is actually preparing our mineral potential report that's going to look at what we know is out there now as far as mineral resources, using our data, their data, everything they can find. Going to look at the existing claims that are out there, what all the information we have. They'll provide that information back to us, and that's pretty much what we'll base our analysis on. The analysis, we're not really going back and looking at any of the sage-grouse decisions per se. Those have all been made. So what we are doing is we are evaluating what would be the impacts of this withdrawal. To provide that information, BLM does not withdraw this, by the way, that's done by the Secretary, not BLM. We'll make a recommendation, and then the Secretary will make the decision on whether it is or isn't withdrawn. So we are just starting the scoping right now, and then we'll plan on, as soon as we get our mineral potential report, USGS has promised that to us sometime this summer. And then once we get that, we're gonna do an analysis, and it's really gonna focus on the socioeconomic aspects of what's going on with this across all the areas. And then we'll put a draft EIS out probably sometime in the fall. And then we'll have more public meetings at that point and discuss what we found and what the impact analysis is saying. That's kind of the broad scope of things. Teresa or Elan, anyone want to add anything to that?
I've got a couple of questions before
Sure.
that. I think you kind of touched on it with what you're going to use to evaluate the social and economic.
Mm-hmm.
Is there other criteria that?
Not specifically, not specific criteria. I mean, what we're really gonna do, what we're looking at is gathering that information. We need as much information as we can on what's on the ground, what are the resources that we're talking about. And this is only from locatable minerals, entry under the mining laws, as opposed to any leasables or saleables. Those things were handled in the land use plan, the amendments that were done last summer. So, but we really need to know what we're dealing with, so we know, perhaps there's rare earth minerals in some of these areas that we may want to consider. I really don't know. I'm just reading tea leaves as far as what might or might not be there, but that will be the basis of the analysis, really, is what's on the ground, what do we really have, and what would be the impacts if we were to withdraw this, if the Secretary was to withdraw. So that's the information we're trying to provide to the Secretary, so he or she will have the information to make an informed decision.
When you refer to the Assistant Secretary, who are you talking about?
The Assistant Secretary for Lands and Minerals, it's basically BLM's boss in the Secretary's office. It's one of I think there's 4 Assistant Secretaries. One of the Assistant Secretaries of the Interior. And that's who approved our application. And that's what started the process.
Okay, so as we move forward, clarification on the comment period has been extended till January 15th.
January 15th.
15th.
Yeah.
And so maybe a little bit of overview of what that means to the public, to us as commissioners, and our comments. Will they be part of the decision, or has the decision already been made? As we put those comments in, or the public put the comments in, what will we get from that? Or what is the potential to get from that? Or does it carry much weight, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, absolutely. And first off, let me say that no decision's been made. The only decision that's been made so far is the segregation, and that wasn't really a decision, that was just an approval of the application. It's automatic by regulation. So that's the only thing that's happened. There is no withdrawal. There's been no decision on the withdrawal whatsoever. And we're very much interested. You folks that are on the ground, you have a lot of information that we may or may not have. And we would definitely want to know what you know. And then we'll deal with that in our draft EIS. Those comments, what we get will be consolidated, and we'll talk about that in the draft EIS and how we came to identify the issues. Really what we're looking at right now, what are the issues we need to identify? This is standard scoping from NEPA pretty much. What are the issues that we need to identify, and what do we need to analyze in the EIS? And we already know that the socioeconomic is gonna be the primary issue, it's gonna be a driver force, but the impacts of the specifics of what that entails in each area is gonna be pretty important. I mean, because it'll have to be laid out. And it's such a diverse area. I mean, you're talking about 10 million acres in 6 different states, and it goes it runs the gamut from the potential mineral resources. So it's gonna be a pretty good job.
And this isn't gonna be the only time that the public will have an opportunity to comment,
Oh, no.
so there'll be lots of opportunity.
So, that comment period's open until the 15th, it needs to be in writing, and there's a process for that to happen. And so this withdrawal is based around minerals. Naturally, one of our big concerns is not only minerals, that is a big concern, but it is recreation, it's our cattlemen. And so, we talk minerals here, but if this decides to come out of withdrawal or be withdrawn, it will impact those other things from roads to cattle to so on. Am I correct on that? Or it could impact that because of, we're talking 1.9 million acres in Oregon, and a significant amount of those in Lake and Harney County, which could impact our local recreation, cattlemen, on the road.
I don't know, Elan is the line manager, and I certainly can't speak for her, but I mean, I don't think, I wouldn't anticipate any impact of the withdrawal on recreation or grazing or anything. That's not being withdrawn, we're not making any decisions regarding that whatsoever. We're just talking about being able to enter lands for the purposes of mining in this area, and that's it. I mean, we're not talking about closing any roads, we're not talking about changing any grazing practices, we're not just, that's not part of our analysis, that's not part of our considerations.
Well, you kind of touched on with the mining, the existing mining operations, but how do you see those being affected one way or the other?
Existing mining operations, if they're ongoing, I mean, if folks have existing mining operations, they continue. I mean, there's no retroactive aspects to this that, well, okay, if we withdraw this, then you're gonna have to close your mine, you have to leave. I mean, folks that have current claims out there that aren't mining yet, they can keep those claims, and if they decide to submit a notice or a plan to actually go out and start operations, then we would do a validity examination on that, but we could do a validity examination on their plan and notice and verify the claim is valid, that it's a valid claim that we would have upheld regardless. So it's possible that they could or couldn't go. I mean, there's some extra steps that they'll have to go through, but I mean, they still have those existing rights we're honoring those, and we're not talking about retracting those at all. They don't go away. But under the segregation, and then subsequently, if it does turn out to be withdrawn, or some piece of it is withdrawn, then there's no filing of new mining claims in the area.
So I want to make sure I fully understand this, because I'm probably molding two things together here, because the sage grouse local areas that you're talking about and all this. So this, if in this 2 years, if there's a decision made, it won't impact recreation, roads, cattle, and those things, it'll only be mining.
Only in regards to mining, entry under the mining laws, period. Nothing else being considered, no other decisions being analyzed, nothing. I mean, this is strictly mining.
In this specific process.
And for this withdrawal process, as part of the withdrawal. And I don't know, I know that the plans, overarching plans have multiple implementation actions that are gonna be going on, that are ongoing. based on what came out of the land use plan amendments that we did last year, that we completed this year. So I don't know what the impacts of those might be locally, I don't know what was recommended, to be honest with you. But as far as this withdrawal goes, we are strictly talking manual entry, nothing anywhere else at all.
So for today's discussion, I'll try to keep it focused on that. So with that, let's say there's miners and they have some areas that they're wanting to mine, will there be potential ways they could mitigate to be able to mine some places that are in here? Is there any triggers, possible mitigation or anything in these areas so that we can keep this mining going?
Well, not for new mining claims, if it's subsequently withdrawn or during the segregation period, I mean, if someone wants to come out and start something brand new, I mean, there's no existing claim, there's no existing mining going on, then during the segregation period, we're not going to approve that until the secretary makes a decision on whether it will or will not be withdrawn. If it's withdrawn, then it's not a matter of mitigating, it's withdrawn from entry. So there won't be any mining, any new mining on it per se. Now, if someone has existing mining operations and they want to expand, they have existing claims that they're tied to, those things get worked out and perhaps Tim could, he's the real technical expert. I'm the land person from Washington, but he's the geologist type in the state office. And he knows those specifics better than I do, but in general, there are certainly opportunities for folks that will keep mining, and there's some limited ways that they could do that. And then there may be, I will say that there may be, part of that would be some sort of mitigation or something that's going to happen.
Well, I hope there's something in there because it'd be very unfortunate to have that many acres locked up to never be developed for mining or anything. Best example here in Lake County is many years ago, our railroad was saved for our sawmills. Today, with the pearlite mine here, it keeps our railroad going. We don't know what's going to be discovered out there.
Sure.
And if there's a decision made and locks it up forever, that's not taking care of what we need to do for our future with the vision. So hopefully there's a way that mitigation can be put in there, or there's a way to be able to take advantage of these resources out there and still take care of the safe routes also. We have to take the human equation into all of this. It's important. So I guess I'm probably on my bandwagon a little bit, but maybe that's something we need to put into our comments.
Certainly,
And
absolutely.
it'd be very unfortunate if it's locked up forever.
Absolutely include that. And by the way, this is, if the secretary does withdraw it, it would be for a period of up to 20 years. It's not in perpetuity. It's not withdrawn forever per se, but it can be renewed. It can be reviewed by the secretary at that point in the same rigmarole we've been through now. So, I will say that.
So again, your question specifically on
Mitigation is
Mitigation.
what I,
the sage grouse EISs that we've just done, recommended mitigations for mining entry within priority habitats. Within the segregation or withdrawal aspect, the segregation doesn't allow for new claims to go in, the withdrawal does not allow for new claims to be entered in. So if you have an existing claim, existing operations, you go through the process, including potential validity exam, to be able to put in. Notices are not a NEPA reviewed document, and so it's not a decision on BLM's part. So mitigation is a little bit more difficult. The plan of operation, when it goes through a NEPA process, and mitigations can be discussed and worked through with that. But that's part of the mining law itself, not with the withdrawal. The withdrawal itself does not allow for a mitigation component to it.
okay. Not exactly what I wanted to hear.
Brad, each case is on a case-by-case basis as well, so, if somebody comes to us and it's within the area that we're looking at for a potential withdrawal, we would look at that case. We're gonna look at the validity of that claim, so it's a case-by-case basis.
I want to ask one more question. I'll do it. I know that on the sage grouse maps that were created by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, I personally believe that those aren't as accurate as they need to be. driving a lot of this, the core habitat, the low density and all this. So will you guys have the opportunity, if those maps are changed by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, made smaller or larger or redone, will you guys adjust to those maps? Or, I believe, I think it was Tim and I last night had some discussion, you guys go by the township range and all that. I personally have a little heartburn, that's your guys' policy you have to do, but sometimes that takes in a whole bunch of extra acres that can impact potential development and different things within Lake County.
Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Services is our partner, of course, and we work very, very closely with them, and we respect their scientific information. Given that, if they change those maps at all, that would be a discussion at a much higher level, I'm sure. So that information would be passed down to us, and we need that information.
Well, we have been promised through the SageCon and all that, is that there will be amendments to the maps, and they have acknowledged that some of them be minor, they say, but to us it's major. So I do anticipate that there should be some amendments to the maps.
Yeah, it's a continuous flow of information. When they first produced the maps, information came from the agency and from the districts about those maps and the information within them, and that's been a continuous part of that information. So if we're going to change them, it's also with our input.
I can tell you one thing on boundaries. You know, you were talking about, we had when we did the notice in the Federal Register to propose the withdrawal, and then we just went to township range, because we didn't have time to come up with land description for the whole sagebrush overlay areas. The squiggly lines, they're polygons, they don't track along the health parts of any specific public land surveys, as you want to say. So what we're doing, just so you know, for the boundaries, is we're refining that during this process. We'll be looking at our boundaries, and we'll be taking it down to the core, which is 40 acres. And then we'll define those boundaries down to the quarter, and we're looking, we haven't decided exactly how much further we're gonna go, but we're, frankly, I'm thinking along like 50-50. There's more than 50% of the quarter is within the sagebrush focal area. We'll include it. If there's less, we move on. Just so we can keep it, probably all come out about the same in the wash as far as total numbers, as far as looking just at the boundaries. But that's kind of what we're thinking right now. We haven't settled on that for sure, but quarter is where we're going. I don't want to go in. We really don't want to go down to another quarter. Then it really gets complex, and we start trying to define a boundary of 10 million acres down to the quarter. That might be a whole book in the Federal Register.
I'm going to try to be good, but I have to say it's really not acceptable. Because if I have my 10 acres on the flush, which I do, and I say, I'm going to go an extra 5 on the BLM just because I don't have time to map it out right, you would be all over me, and you would shut me down. So what's acceptable for me to have to go by, BLM should have to go by also. Trying to be nice, but I don't have much.
Well, please provide that input in your comments. I mean, and that's certainly something we'll look at. I mean, that's just what we're thinking right now. Like I said, we haven't really decided how we're gonna do it.
They really need to be accurate, especially if this is a 20-year, going to be a 20-year decision. They need to be accurate. They need to be appropriate. And so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that gets back to the scientific part. It can't be scientific if we just draw lines on the map or we flip a coin. Once we get down to the nitty-gritty, we need to be accurate.
Okay.
I wanted to let the public ask a few questions. I didn't know that last night, that probably a few questions from the public. If you have any.
No, that's fine.
Is there any questions from the public? Ginger?
Well, this is probably very simplistic, but could you give us a definition of segregation? What does that mean?
That means that we have identified the lands for potential withdrawal, or for proposed withdrawal, it comes straight out of the regulations. I'm trying to pull off the top of my head and I can't come up with the number. But anyway, it comes straight out of the regulations. And what happens is they're no longer open to entry under the mining laws while we consider this for a period of 2 years. And that is not extendable. If we don't finish our work, add on us, and the segregation goes away. But it gives us 2 years to complete our work and follow the process and go through the public process and make sure we do the analysis and get our marks. So basically, we've closed it, we temporarily closed it to entry under mining laws for 2 years while we provide a recommendation to the secretary and analyze the potential for what the potential impacts would be to withdraw it from a couple years.
So those mines that are operating right now during that segregation period,
No
they can
impact.
continue? There's no
Absolutely.
impact. They just can't get bigger? Or-
Well, I wouldn't even say they couldn't get bigger, because they potentially can get bigger. Doesn't mean that they can't get bigger.
Correct, but it would trigger the validity
Right.
potential,
Right.
so.
Potential, possibly. I mean, it's, the validity exam is somewhat discretionary during the segregation period. That's one of the differences between the segregation and withdrawal. The withdrawal, we would have to do a validity exam to allow current operations to expand. For segregation, if this is a known quantity, we understand that it's there wouldn't be any real value, and we're confident that it's a valid suggestion, then we wouldn't even necessarily trigger a validity exam for that.
So this new moratorium, or this moratorium for 2 years is on new claims, new ground, as you described
Yes.
earlier.
Yes.
Mr. Aldridge.
John Aldridge, Dub Legal Mining Company. Two-part question. First, how as miners do we go in and prospect to try and prove that there's resource in there when we're told we can't enter or file new claims? So we're not even allowed to go try and prove our case that there are minerals in there. Second part, we can't go in there. Are you guys gonna come in and actually do boots on the ground study and find where the sage grouse are? Because some of the areas you've drawn in, I've been out there 10 years, I haven't seen sage grouse in those areas.
I'll answer your last question. We're not going to revisit the question of the maps per se on, we haven't seen any sage grouse on the ground. You know, I can't really speak to that one way or another. I mean, I'm not a wildlife biologist, and I wasn't involved with that. But I know that the land use plans provided us these maps that identified their priority, their most important stronghold habitats. And that's what they recommended be withdrawn. So that's what we're working on. And we're working off of those maps. We're not going to, in this process, we are not going to revisit those maps and say, oh, well, you know what, in this area, there hasn't been any sage grouse, there's not any sage grouse, so we want to redraw that map. We're not revisiting those decisions that were already made in the land use plan amendments from last summer. We are merely looking at the withdrawal that was recommended by those plans. So I'm using the data that they had, that they provided us, and then we're analyzing the potential withdrawal for what they recommended based on that. I'm not revisiting those decisions. So now, as far as your first part, I'll leave that to Tim. He's a technical guy.
Again, another question you're not gonna like the answer to.
I know.
So,
But people need to hear it because it is the land.
on your claims that you have now, you put a process to go through and prove them out and explore. The segregation and withdrawals, as implemented, withdrawal or apply to the mining law, they can send it to you as amended. So it stops all process of possessory right to file a new claim within those lands. So you cannot take and, if you proved out your claim up to your point, there's not a venue right now to allow you to go out and file a new claim adjacent to it within the segregation.
Well, I'm not talking about filing new claims. I'm talking about going out and prospecting and showing that there is potential out there where we can file new claims but basically we're being told, we're cut off, we can't even go out there and look and prove if there's a viable mineral for future mining.
So what, if I can ask a question of clarity, at what part are you talking about prospecting? You're talking about using equipment to go out and do
No,
glory
we're
holes?
going out and walking on the ground and taking samples
The-
and trying to prove that there's a viable product for the market out there that's being cut off, which is local economy, income, jobs in the future, who knows?
Any access that is allowed by the land use plans, whether it's hiking or so forth, can still be allowed. It's just, it's not a process under the 1872 mining law to be allowed as far as.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is we're not being allowed to go in and prove that there may be viable minerals in those areas to plead our case that, hey, we need access to some area. Is there a chance we might be able to do something in there in the future? We're being told we're cut off from that area unless we have an existing filing already. So we can't expand into that area or potentially go in and look and see if there's future expansion in
Well, again, you're not prohibited from walking on the land.
No.
The claims don't, or the land use plans don't close out from hiking, and that there are restrictions. What the segregation and potential withdrawals would be is the process of filing claims and notices and kind of operations like that.
If you did some prospecting in that sense, I mean, you're walking around, you're looking for surface exposures, you're looking for sign, you know, and you can do that, but even if you find it, what you could do is you could, the real value to that would be providing that information to us so we better define the mineral potential for the land, as opposed to, you know, you would not, though, if you find it, you would not be able to file a claim on it.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm asking. We'll
Right.
still be able to go in and plead our case that there
Sure.
may be other
Yeah.
minerals in
I
it.
mean, if you find information, you're out there doing that level of prospecting, you know, that type of prospecting, there's nothing that says you can't do that. There's just something that says you can't act on.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to figure out how in this process of the 2-year moratorium, and you've answered my question, so we can go in, look around,
Oh, sure.
find potential deposits,
Sure.
advise you guys and say, hey, there is some resources in here.
Absolutely. By all means, that's exactly what the mineral potential report should provide us. That's what we need to know, is what's actually on the ground and what's going to be impacted if the secretary decides to withdraw this. What would be the impact? And that would,
Mike, if I'm not mistaken, that should complement your guys' process in this 2 years that you guys are going to try to identify potential minerals within this 2 years so that they are acknowledged when the decision is made. I thought I heard that earlier.
absolutely.
And so if people that have the passion to go out and prospect, if they find potential, that should complement what you guys are working on. Am I
Absolutely.
correct on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're looking for input. We're not trying to,
Yeah, I know, that's why I was asking. And
Yeah.
in the
Tim really
process-
wants to say something.
Let me make sure I can, so. Secretary of, Assistant Secretary of Minerals presented last 2 weeks ago at ANEA. And part of the discussion of that is that they're looking for information from the public. And so claim holders, miners, and so forth, that's not proprietary information, information that's shared, that's public information.
Right.
But if you have information showing potentials, resources, and so forth, be able to provide that. We discussed last night about providing that in your comments as well. So USGS has that information when looking at their potentials.
right.
And so they've really encouraged from the Assistant Secretary down to provide information of what you know to be potentials within the segregation area.
The more information we get, the better informed we'll be, the better the decision should be.
Lynn, one thing I would like for you to definitely point out, I think, or Tim, is that our area out there for public digging of sunstones will continue to be open. This is not shutting it down to the public. I know there's a lot of concerns, but the word public may just be good for that to be put out there. So, because that's a huge part of recreational
Sunstone area, in that public area. I have two maps for you, a large one that will leave with you that has some general information. I also have a smaller map that shows exactly where the focal areas are and also the existing claims, the general area, for you guys to take a look at as well. And that should provide some clarity there. But our open area there should be just fine. Okay. The other thing I want to make sure is clear to folks is the only areas that we're looking at for potential withdrawal, you correct me if I'm wrong, is those sagebrush focal areas.
Right.
Okay, just those areas, not the whole landscape, just those areas.
Yeah, I just know that there is some existing claims in those areas.
There are.
Oh, yeah.
And
Not
there is
many, but some.
potential around those.
There is. So that information's gonna be important.
And also on the rough map I seen online, your focal area kind of cuts through the top northwest corner of the public area.
It's right on the edge. It's right on the edge. We need to get on the ground and take a look at it.
Public focal area though is already, or excuse me, the public area is already withdrawn from the city mining law. And so that is not included within the withdrawal discussion.
Yeah, I didn't understand that till last night, Tim, thank you, because probably did, if it was part of the mining, then it would, people, public could go out there and dig it.
Right, if this is casual use, I mean, if this is just folks out looking for stuff, that's different than entry into mining. I mean, that's a whole different thing. I mean, we're talking commercial mining versus someone's casual use or going out looking for sunstones or whatever.
Recreational exploration.
Right.
Yeah, for our local business out there, he was very concerned, so that would be good.
There's some pretty good exploratory digging going on in the public area you guys need to look at.
Thank you.
Very politically correct. We're running a little bit late. I'd like to tell you guys, thank you very much. If there's any in public that wants to ask you questions, maybe catch them in the hall or whatever, but ask them, go ahead and get on our agenda, get along with our agenda.
My last statement, if anybody else is confused at all, I mean, some of these things get a little complicated. So if anybody's confused, concerned about an area, wants to look at a map, I encourage you to come into the office and talk to us, because we can pull out a map, take a look at it, take a look at where your lines are, our lines are, and work something out. And like I say again, each case is case by case. Each area is case by case. So.
Thank you.
Teresa, I didn't give you a chance to say anything, I apologize. Did you have any comment or statement that you wanted to make?
I think the only thing I would add is that this idea of the withdrawal is a very important part of the overall conservation plan for sage grouse. And it's one of the things that allowed Fish and Wildlife Service to make a finding that the sage grouse did not need to be listed. This scoping period that we're in right now, the due date for those comments is January 15th. And the most important thing for us to have by January 15th are your ideas on what we need to take into account in the draft environmental impact statement. So that would be things like economic considerations. I would say we can accept comments at any time. So even past January 15th, and that might be very important for you to know if you have information about mineral potential that you want to share. If it's past January 15th, I would encourage you to submit that information. As USGS is doing the mineral potential report, that's important information that would need to be shared at that time.
Yeah, any information like I was talking about, going out and trying to find other minerals is not able to do that before January 14th, mainly. We don't go out there this time of year.
Right. So the most important thing for us to have by January 15th, this is the time when we're forming our planning criteria for the draft environmental impact statement. So anything that you wanted to say about economics, tie-in with recreation, the community, anything of that nature, that's pretty important for us to get at this time. But please know that we welcome public input throughout the entire process. We're very grateful to to all of you for your interest and the input that you'll be providing to us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you're more than welcome to stay through our meeting. Okay, we're running just a few minutes late. At 9:30 is Town of Lakeview, Riverboat consent to annexation request. Mr. Ray Sims is here. Come on up, Ray. Good morning.
Good morning. I just I'm here to answer any questions you may have. It sort of speaks for itself. I did bring a map that Rick and I had looked at earlier. It was laying on the council desk. So when you guys go over there, but if you'd like to see a map of a little larger than something that you have in the packet that kind of shows the overall scope of town and where these particular annexations are located. I
Okay.
have
So, Ray, we probably have quite a few questions. First question on the irrevocable consent annexation. It's been a while since we've done one of those, but if we agree to the proposal the town is bringing forward on the roads, alley, and the properties, then you have, what's your process?
Okay,
You have to go to landowners, and if they protest, does
the,
it not go through, or what?
yeah, the consent we requested to you is only about the two streets and the alley. The property owners have already consented to annexation, and that annexation process is moving forward. At this point, we're only asking you whether or not you desire to allow those identified roads, which is 2 blocks of South 10th Street and 2 blocks of South L Street, and a short piece of alley to be annexed in the town or not.
So my question would be is if we agree to that, is there anything in your process that it wouldn't happen? Could a landowner say, no, I don't want that street to be part of this, or is it just a done deal?
Well, excuse me, we will develop an ordinance for this annexation process that will include, at the time we'd identified, excuse me, 6 parcels of land. One of those has really been taken out. It's the one on East Street. It's no longer, and in fact, I don't think the map that you have even includes it. Early on, we had identified a parcel there that we were looking at annexing as well. So at this point, the parcels have been identified. They are being provided with water and sewer services already, or in the case of the 42nd group that bought them, it was McFarland or was Warner Mountain Recycling, whoever they all were, they simply have just requested to be annexed in town. They already are receiving water and sewer services. So we'll develop an ordinance. It'll be on a future council agenda. It isn't scheduled. We're waiting to see whether or not to include these streets in the alley that identifying with you. And then the ordinance will be developed for probably one of the council meetings in January. And at that point, of course, people could come forward to speak about the ordinance, I assume. We always allow public comment. And so I couldn't tell you whether or not it will or won't be approved. I'm assuming because we've got property owners who have requested service and agreed to annexation that it will be annexed.
Okay, so, well, I guess where I'm going, Ray, is the roads, and working with the roads, that we're trying to make sure on our snowplow, our chip sealing, and our maintenance, is that we've been doing this piecemeal for so long that we're ending up with stub roads, we're ending up with not a complete loop for chip sealing or for paving or for snowplow. And so if we agree to this, we need to sort of look at a plan of what the town and the county on the road maintenance and the plowing and everything, so it flows right. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to figure out the process.
These particular streets, except for the piece that's not constructed, of L Street, do kind of complete loops, complete surrounding of areas that have already been annexed into town for the most part. You know, they're not dead end roads or you know, they kind of complete what was already started. For example, South K and South L between 10th and 11th Street were annexed, you know, a number of years ago. So was South 11th. South 10th now, 2 blocks of that would kind of complete a loop of, or you know, a block of area that's there. The one South L Street that is a constructed road between South 11th and South 12th does complete one side of that block of property that connects 2 streets that are already annexed into town. So I don't see these as creating dead ends or inconsistent.
Well, brainstorming on this, Ray, and looking at it, both these seem to make sense, and they help close a gap that's been there, actually. Would the town consider even making it a little bit better, as far as I'm concerned, for the maintenance and everything, of maybe, and this one, just for discussion, you talk L and K, it seems like that those ought to go ahead and go all the way to 9th Street there, or whatever, to where your boundary is, so you make a whole loop there whenever you're plowing snow, or when you're chip sealing. What that does is we end up with these 2 stubs here that become a management issue for our road department whenever we go to plowing snow.
Sure. I understand, excuse me, I understand what you're saying. I guess the other aspect of that, Brad, that you might want to at least take into consideration is if we were to take those 2 streets into town as annexed streets into the town of Lakeview, then you've created 2 blocks of property that are then surrounded. You know, you create, and I can't sit here today and tell you what the island annexation process amounts to, but you may be, by allowing that to happen, you may actually be creating some other issues that some of your residents in that area might not appreciate. Not that we have a desire to be annexing all of that area in town necessarily, unless they want water or sewer, but you may be setting property owners in the county up for an easier process of annexing into the town of Lakeview, and they may not really want that to happen.
So are you saying if the roads are annexed in, that it forces annexation to those landowners?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm saying that there are some,
I didn't think it did.
there are some island annexation provisions in law, and because we've not exercised those anytime that I've been part of the process, I just suggesting that maybe before you create or suggest creating an island, we probably ought to understand what that process could be.
Well, the main one would be L to M, you would island that one, but really K,
There is
I
a-
guess you would with K too. Yeah, but not the next one, not S. Ray, on that alley that you just took a little piece there between L and M, I think the alley to the north is vacated.
Yes.
And what is the rest of that alley south? Is it vacated?
It hasn't been vacated, but it was annexed apparently when all of that M Street.
So you have that piece too?
It's already our jurisdiction.
Yeah,
So it's
that's why
already
we printed out these
isolated.
other maps so we can see, it'd been helpful to see what was already there. Which you have that map there now.
Sure.
The biggest concern I have is S Street has 200, 300 feet that's annexed into the city. So when we get ready to chip seal that 3/4 of a mile up there and we get to that 300 feet, what happens there, Ray? Or do you have the money in your budget to pay us to chip the 300 feet, or what do we do?
Well, I would assume that we would do something, you're gonna put this on a schedule as is of when you plan to chip seal, which would allow us to either budget for it or on
Is that like a year
possible
notice?
grant application. As you know, you guys chip sealed a mile of us, for us on M Street. And we were able to get some grant money to help pay our cost of that, so. It is in the town of Lakeview, it's in our jurisdiction, it is our responsibility, so.
So you'd need at least like a year of notice or more?
Yeah, I would think if we could get a year's notice and provide some opportunity to look for the funds. The other thing, I guess, Rick, is, realistically, if we weren't able to find the money, didn't have the resources to do it at the time, I guess you stop. I know the county also struggles with road funding as well, so you stop if you're into your jurisdiction.
Well, that's what Brad's getting at, I think, it's just, it'd make it cleaner if we had right here, taking 10th would help enclose that section, to the 12th Street. I mean, that would help there, but it's the S Street, that's the problems that we need to avoid, because, and you'll have it on 10th and 11th too, you're only gonna come down to K, and then, it's
At this
just gonna
time.
be, the public's gonna be wondering about that too,
Our, these annexations and most of the town's annexations usually come about as a result of providing water and sewer service to properties. We had 3 of those properties, the 3 on K Street, that this past summer were having well issues and requested the water service from the town because they were having problems with the private water supply. And I suspect, who knows, it looks like we're headed a little different this winter, but as we continue to look at those issues, I think we'll see more and more requests. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who has water and who doesn't down in that area south of 9th Street. But I'm pretty certain there's several more that are on private wells, and as their wells become less reliable, they're probably going to be looking for other sources, which in time will also result in future annexations. Yeah, the urban growth boundaries are primarily created for the future expansion of the city or town within which they're located, and this is kind of the process that happens as the opportunity and need comes along, they're proposed.
So Ray, if I remember right, when we took L and M, or K, didn't we try to take 10th then, and there was a landowner there on 10th and M that kind of stopped that?
I don't remember. I just don't remember.
So let's say if he
I was
does-
over here on the other side at that point.
So let's say if he does it again, then are we just gonna leave 10th out, or? Because I remember what happened.
Well, the street is yours, so maybe before you agree to annexing, allowing your street to be annexed, maybe you should contact that person and let them know what.
Well, I was like Brad, I wasn't sure on the hearing process, what was the front of the cart or the horse, or the horse of the cart?
We are in the process of annexing 5 parcels of property, and we're willing, I guess I would say, to take those streets and that alley that's been identified into our jurisdiction, and they do become our responsibility if you want them to. It's fully your decision whether or not you want to allow those to be part of the process.
So it's not as important to you on 10th as L is, because L, it hooks up to the recycling center.
The recycling center is already 2 sides of it, 3 sides of it actually are already annexed into town. The block is divided in half, and the north half of that particular block of land is already annexed into town. M Street and South 12th Street are already annexed into town, so they're, you know, we're already adjacent to it on 3 sides. You know, having that piece of street between 11th and 12th just, I guess it's another, it's just a short piece of
Well,
street that doesn't.
Like L Street, when you took 12th in that L in between 11th and 12th, I mean, that's like the county going down and getting Highland. I mean, you're surrounded by it, and I got, you know, here I got 860 feet of highway right in the middle of you. That one should have probably went when you took 12th.
I don't know why it wasn't annexed.
Yeah, 11th
With
and
that.
12th, that was kind
That process.
that's the stuff
But
that.
if you look on
doesn't make
down
sense.
further south, Rick, and this happened back in the 90s, I couldn't remember exactly when, 93, 94. It was when the water and sewer services were extended to Lakeview Ready Mix, I believe was what started it. All of the county-owned properties at that time were annexed into the town of Lakeview. And there may have been some private properties that were if they agreed to it, but as you can see, the boundary, if you look at this map, the boundary kind of jogs around, and when you look at L Street, it didn't include any of L Street, even though it was unconstructed between South 11th and Cadmus Road. I don't know.
And you took L in at a different time between 10th and 11th. It wasn't the
I
same
didn't
time.
do the history to tell you, I couldn't tell you when it was. but it was-
M Street and all industrial was done there with the Butler bill, when the Butler bill came and there was dollars available. That was in the last 15 years roughly, and that was annexed, that part was annexed in.
Oh,
11th Street was whenever the development was done down there where the Head Start is going.
And
That was
they were just
done.
gonna put a housing in there as well.
Yeah, they replatted
Yeah, that was
that
done.
particular block at night.
There's water and stuff down from the 395 down, that was early 90s. I actually worked on that.
Yeah, it was paid for by Matt Outland, Oil Lake, and Gerald Stewart, and I think there was a 4th partner in the process.
So, so you have 11th Street, the town has 11th Street all the way down.
No, we have 11th Street from K to
Okay.
N.
And so, did you drop E Street, this one up here then?
Yes,
It's not. it's-
we're not, yes, we're not doing that at this time.
Okay. I was gonna have a discussion on that, go ahead and have a discussion, you're not gonna do that at this time. That, if that was annexed, you're getting close to half that block there, we should discuss that road when it's ready to annex it to.
It'll be a,
At that time, because you do have services in that road,
Down to 10th Street.
down where the columns are. This is on Main Street. I
so
know
that, even though I'd identified it early on, it is actually, it's not being proposed
You
at
want,
this time.
you want to remove that from this proposal that we have in front of us.
Yeah, actually, the map you have shows it, but the streets that we're proposing from you have nothing to do with it, and we're not going there.
So you're not gonna annex that land at all on E
Those
Street?
4 lots you're not annexing.
Well, the rest of it down there, I don't have a problem. I think, my view, if we can get 10th in, that'd be great. At least tie that more together.
In reading your irrevocable consent annexation, you have to go through your process. You have a year to do this.
Yes, your irrevocable consent is good for a year. It'll happen.
So if we make this decision tomorrow, we'll start your process, then you go through your public hearings. And after the public
Yes,
hearings,
we're prepared to start the process, and it's just a matter of, are we including the roads or not?
okay. You need more information?
No.
Rick, you need more?
No.
The only thing I'd say, I'd really encourage for the town and your public works and our road department to work together to come up with a plan in the future for our vision or whatever.
Well, we've had it,
You know, urban growth.
we're into a new era of public works at the town of Lakeview, and, Rick's well aware of that. In fact, I think Jeff told me that there's you're having a weather-related meeting out at your place, that he's planning to attend. So
Very good.
I think it's a good time to dust off relationships and figure out who's doing what and how we're helping each other out where we can.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And why don't you stay right there real fast? If you don't mind, because we have two other things that impact the town, or one other thing that impacts the town is on our agenda. Move down our agenda to the town of Lakeview Museum support. I'd like to talk with that before I go to my 10 o'clock item real fast, being we brought that forward. Through the community service fee and agreement with Red Rock and the development there, the town of Lakeview has put together an MOU that would go along with the county support, financial support for the operations of the Smink Museum if acquired by Lake County, and if Red Rock does build and does pay the community service fee of $10,000 for the term of the community service fee, which is 15 years. Did I hit pretty much everything? So this is for us to act on tomorrow. As the board, your board has already acted on it, so we have it forward. Is there anything that you would like to mention or say on it?
I don't think so, Brad. It is in draft form. I believe my letter to you said, if you find the MOU to be acceptable, we'll have it put in final form for signature. I don't know if Darwin was there. I don't know that the council, obviously that we sent something to you signifies that is what the council is willing to support, but they didn't make a final motion, I guess. What they did make a motion was to actually change the draft that I had for them and propose that to you. So that's where we are.
So if this is acceptable to the board of commissioners, then it go back to the town for them to finalize it.
But I think you can assume that the terms that are there are acceptable to the town.
I would think so, if they brought the draft forward. I just want to make sure that you had a chance if our commissioner had any questions on it.
Just facetiously.
Okay.
I see we have it split in here, but I understand from reading the paper, we haven't agreed on that yet, so.
Well, I saw that too. I think
We're not
that's,
having that meeting.
that
No,
might
we're
have
not.
been, that might be old news.
Yeah, that's all I'm good.
All right, I just want to make sure you had an opportunity to mention anything. Thank you very much. Being we have a couple of people here, I'm going, before I go to 10 o'clock, I'm going to go to the Double Eagle Loan Extension. I know Ann is here and John Aldridge is here, so Ann, if you'd like to come up, and we'll get that one.
We have received a letter from Double Eagle Mine to suspend their loan payments from the Community Development Loan Program. To give a little history, they received this loan in 2013 for their mining operation out in the Sunstone area that we talked about this morning. They have been on time with all their payments since 2013, so they're right at the midway of this 5-year agreement. So this letter and this request suspends payments for the months of December, January, and February to resume in March. That's the request, and then, we kind of put the whole loan on hold. We don't accrue more interest during that time period. We just start it all again in March. So instead of pay off in June of 2018, it goes out 3 months to September of 18.
So this would be exactly what I said, extend by 3 months to total.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna deal with it tomorrow, but it looked very reasonable to me.
Okay. So final decision will be made tomorrow, and then we can let Mr. Aldrich know the result of the meeting. Okay.
Thank you for being patient. Thank you, Tom. Okay, moving on to our 10 o'clock, Smink Museum transfer recommendation. this is brought forward by myself. And this is for possible action consideration today, Commissioner. For several months now, I've been working with the local DAR, the state DAR, Lake County Museum Board, our legal counsel, and many others on potential transfer of the Smink Museum to county ownership for a minimal cost. I guess it's been quite interesting. It's been quite a ride, to be perfectly honest with you, but a very positive thing. The local DAR chapter has maintained and taken care of this Smink Museum for many years through the guidance of the state DAR by the will, Lewis Smink's will, and by the legal ways for that to happen. The local ladies are just, I can't say enough of how professional they are. They had to make a tough decision, and they just can't take care of the museum anymore. And they put a very professional letter out to the state DAR and relinquished any obligation to take care of that. The state acknowledged that. The state region, they've been wonderful to work with. I've had some meetings with Cindy Pernall and John Hunter and others. Very supportive of our local history, this Smink Museum, and of course try to preserve that for Lake County and for our tourists and for other people to come into Lake County and utilize that. It's really a unique situation with the will that Lewis Smink put together for the operations of that. So it brings in a lot of legal questions, legal ways to have to make this happen. And so the state DER is working with their legal counsel. I've worked with ours, and I've worked with them in some executive sessions and others. I'll disclose at this time under potential land acquisitions. And we're there today to be able to look at a proposal to take over the Smink Museum. With that, as we just talked about, the town of Lakeview through the community service fee, through negotiations and that, I've been able to work and hopefully be able to leverage the $10,000 a year to help keep that going. So what I need today, and I'm sorry, we do have John Griffin here representing Lake County Museum. Lake County Museum Board, nobody individual, the board has been working on this alone. And the board has, correct me if I'm wrong, John, the board has voted and obligated that they will, if we're able to acquire this for a nominal fee, take over the operations of this Smink Museum. And you guys officially have voted, didn't you? Yes. And so everything's in place for us as a board to make a decision to the next step, to accept and put the proposal out there. So what I need today is for us as a board to say, yes, we want the museum. Yes, we will take over the operations in support of Lake County Museum, and we want to take ownership of it. With that said, it's not only the Smink Museum, it is also the parking lot also. So if we make that decision, I'm trying to cover everything here, Commissioner, it triggers a lot of things. Everything that was donated to that by Lewis Smink, 1964 and prior, technically would be the Oregon Historical Society's ownership. The Oregon Historical Society has said that they have no desire really to take that stuff from here. They may consider some individual things, which would be their right. But all indications are is that it would stay the same as it is now. Anything that was donated after, I believe the date is 1964, isn't it, John? Yeah. anybody that donated anything after that would have to be notified, and they'd have the right to acquire their stuff or leave it in the museum. All by the will and by the law it has to do. The other thing is for this to happen, where there is a will, the Oregon Attorney General has to be involved to be able to make this process happen, which they've already been contacted by the state DER. So it's not just that we say we want this to happen, there's going to be a process. The state, region, state DER, their vote would be in May. It'd be a little bit after our budget time. If they have to take it to the vote, that's another time frame you have to be aware of. The Board of Commissioners or Budget Committee would have to commit to supporting this link and the Lake County Museums, whether or not Red Rock dollars come.
That was one of the questions I had.
Yes. Lake County Museum Board, and with everything that they have worked on, they see that their vision right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but their vision is that the extra cost, yes, there'll be extra cost, power, heating, water, all that will double, no doubt. As far as for, and maintenance also, as far as for operations, they've come up with a tentative plan that they should be able to operate without a whole lot more cost for personnel. Is that correct, John?
That's correct.
So, additional cost to Lake County General Fund to supplement it, yes, there would be. If I was to throw out a guess, I would say $5,000 a year. And that's a total guess until we got down to that. Trying to think of what I may have forgotten. John, is there anything I have forgotten?
No, I don't think so.
The,
What other investments, Commissioner, because when we talk about heating and cooling, we don't want to chase nickels like their manhole covers or something, but that we have the opportunity to lessen that cost long term by some improvements to the facility.
very, very good point. We, the museum board, myself, is working with the state endowment fund, and the building and things there need to be brought to a standard today that makes it more efficient. Working with them, they're checking on what dollars can be used to improve or do the maintenance on that before transfer could happen. So there's real potential for there to be improvements over there done out of some dollars that's available through the state. Haven't got that narrowed down to exactly what that would be. Naturally, first thing we think of is efficiency of the heating system, and then just the structure itself. We want to make sure that windows and everything are as efficient as they can be. Okay. So what I need today, whenever we'll ask for questions or whatever, with a decision by us to say yes, we want to accept this.
Is that your motion?
Not at this point. I want to make sure if there's anybody in the audience that has any questions or any comments. I must.
So how does the, I'm just curious, I don't know what the annual cost is on water and sewer. What would that be, Ray? Because I know we have minimum rates.
Minimal water and sewer, power, I can't recall the exact figure. We need a new heating system.
Right.
I'm not sure about the windows. A new alarm system is really necessary also. But as Brad said, there is money in the will, endowment fund. The question is whether or not that could be used before the final turnover from the state to the county
approve it. If that's not the case, that money then leaves Oregon. It goes to a couple of schools in Appalachia, as I understand. We're hoping it can stay here. But the bills that we're paying right now are pretty low, they're pretty manageable, and I can get those figures too.
I don't think I need it, John. I was more curious about the water and sewer.
The water and sewer, I believe that they're on the residential rate there. And so it would be $42.16 a month unless during the summer they were to exceed the minimum in watering the lawn. And I don't believe they have. So, you know, $40 a month, $500 a year.
$500.
Now there is an alarm there. I know they, it's probably not terribly sophisticated, but it does ring into 911.
Yes.
So there is an alarm system. A question I guess I would have, Brad, is you mentioned the state, you know, the collection actually of the yearly collection would belong to the state of Oregon, to the historic, Oregon Historical Society. Will you be entering into an agreement with them to keep it here, or is this just an understanding among friends, so to speak?
Ray, I
And you
really
already know
can't answer that question. Right off the top of my head, I know this is an email I got from Cindy Pernall. They're going to formally contact Oregon Historical Society to update them on the status. Whether they would still, I think we would probably still have to honor what that part of it is.
Well, I would think so. I would be more interested in their commitment that it would, even though it belongs to them, that they would leave it here for.
Yes, and all indications are, that they have used the word, not to me, but that they may cherry pick.
I've heard that.
And if they did, that would be their right. If it's something significant, important to our history, I would put up quite a discussion that why it should stay here. And, you know, all indications are is that they're very much, they believe in the local history also. So all indications are very good.
My comments, personally, and I think from the town of Lakeview as well, are that I think that this is a great opportunity. If you don't do this, if you're not able to find a way to do this, it's likely to go away, and that would be terribly unfortunate. And so I would encourage you to continue down this process and make this happen. I also, you know, I had going back years and years and years, understand that parking lot is a value to the county. You know, it isn't. There was an agreement, I assume there still is, with DAR for overflow parking from the county over onto that, as well as I think the Presbyterian Church parking lot, with some exceptions of when there's special events at the church taking place. So it has a value to you beyond just the museum. As we get more crowded in the downtown area with parking availability, and also there's more to it. There's a little more to it, although the museum is to me the most important piece. There is more to it than that.
Yes, thank you, Ray. I appreciate your support very much. So I'm trying to think exactly. My motion would be, I'd like to make a motion for Lake County to pursue the opportunity to purchase the Sweet Museum and parking lot at a minimal cost.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion?
Just, I know you put a great deal of time into this, Commissioner, and it's not always been easy. It is appreciated if your understanding and love of the history, not wanting to lose this. It's very commendable, very much appreciated.
Thank you, appreciate that. And I have to say, the professionalism of the local DAR, the state DAR, the museum board, none of these things are easy, but the passion that these people have for our history, to preserve it, I can't thank all of them.
just like to say that from this, excuse me, the standpoint of preservation of our heritage in this county, from the visitor's standpoint, we have a great deal of interest coming through the chamber in both museums in this county. And I think it would behoove us to move forward with this land, and I thank you for your interest and your heart in that as well.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. That's a milestone. I will say the nominal fee that was put out there is $1, so it's not a financial burden. All right. Moving on with our agenda. We are going to take a 5-minute break.
Well, I think she
Okay, we'll come back into session at 10:32. We will wait for Denise to come back in session. Okay, we're still on break.
All right.
So we're still on. John, thank you for all of your payments on that loan and everything being on time.
Well, it's mostly, well, give you guys a quick update if I can.
We're not in session, we're just.
Off the record.
Hold on while I cut the audio.
looking down our agenda, our next item, we have Darwin in front of us, so I don't think I have an option.
I'm just gonna, this is a better seat than
I think we're gonna go to our addition at this time. I just give you bad time. Our addition is the mineral, mineral rights request. I'm looking for it. So, give us an overview, Darwin.
Quick overview, Obsidian's made a request to transfer mineral rights on properties that they own. And the county has followed the ORS language, which allows for this process to move forward. First by receiving a request, and then with that request is proof of the ownership, which Obsidian has submitted to us. And then they make a cash deposit, which is to cover all costs associated with this transfer, or potential transfer, which includes an investigation by a geologist. We looked into that process and who would be qualified as a licensed geologist in the state to do this work. Jen K. Smith out of Hines, Oregon, had performed some of these in the past for Harney County. I checked with him as well as a couple other locals. And, he was selected, he did the report, it's been submitted to us. I've given you guys all copies of that to review. Conversation has continued with Obsidian Renewables on the findings of that report, in which 5 of the properties were looked at. They're all potential solar sites, 4 of which have received solar approval through the land use process. And this, in their communications with us, clears up investors' concerns about any of the encumbrances on the land and the disturbance that might be caused by these mineral rights not being in their possession, and if found a potential, then there could be problems with their projects. So 3 of the sites have potential, or sorry, 3 of the sites have no finding of mineral resources on these properties, but 2 do, and the report kind of lays that out as a potential value on those sites. Obsidian still would like to have all 5, but the statute allows us to set a minimum value. It also requires us to make a finding that there are little or doubtful value. It's kind of my opinion that the report certainly speaks against there being little value to those other 2 sites. Actually, it says potentially a very great value to those, of which I don't think we can come to any conclusion on a minimum fee for those sites. So Obsidian would like to know kind of where we stand on that. They would like to see that if we could come to any conclusion that we could move all 5 properties forward, but then still at the final hearing, which has to be 6 weeks out from this date, right, today, or actually tomorrow. I do have a potential date in the documents that you've been given, February, that first meeting dates, the first week in February. It's gonna be hard to come to a conclusion, so that's gonna go.
So Darwin, I believe that every one of us commissioners have been contacted by Lori Hutchinson, and to disclose my conversation with her and where I'm at is the 3 properties that show no mineral value. I'm good with moving forward on those. The other 2 that has a diatomaceous earth at this point, and I gave this indication to Lori, is that I'm not ready to move forward on those at this time. So that's me individually. So with that said, and trying to look through your order here, and it talks about exhibit A or whatever it is. I don't remember which exhibit it says. Is that all 3 or is that all 5 or what? If we approve this order, right, can we make sure that my thoughts would be just for the 3?
Yeah. So the exhibit A, which were in the email that give you all these attachments, is the legal description of all 5 properties.
Okay.
And the reason why I didn't, you know, as I submitted it to you, I didn't wanna remove those 2 at this time, and I left it up to you guys, and we can certainly just move the forward. It would actually be a lot of cost savings, cause this is gonna have to get published, this whole legal is gonna have to get published. And so it'd save money if we really know, and you guys feel we won't come to, you know, being able to find those 2 other properties of little or no value, then we won't be making that transfer. I think the statute is pretty clear that we can't, so,
Well,
at
I
least
think
under
this
this
time,
process.
Darren, I don't think in the next 6 weeks, we're gonna be able to determine that they don't. I mean, they, obviously, the potential is there for them to have great value, as you stated earlier, as Commissioner Warner said. I can see us moving forward as the 3, but not the other 2.
It has background that we've all discussed individually, I've discussed with you guys individually, is that, we're hoping to get a letter, you know, some kind of agreement that we can, agree to at the county with Obsidian on those other 2, that would kind of alleviate, you know, kind of the concerns that the financial, you know, backing has on these projects.
Well, they just need to come in, you and I talked about this 2 or 3 times, they just need to come out and say, this is what it's gonna take, and then we can determine whether that's an acceptable agreement or not. Because I don't think there's any plan to do anything at this time, but we don't want to remove that option, and we definitely don't want to give away those potential valuable minerals, so.
So what, you could easily just make a scratch of those 2 other properties, the order has the 3 that.
So what I would like to see for tomorrow is for the order to be rewritten and have the 3 properties there, so you can move forward with the hearing process and get that advertised. And then we'll continue the discussion on the other 2 properties, on the value and potential ways to work through that with Obsidian. But at this point, this would, and Lori gave an indication they'd really like to, at minimum, have those 3 done right away. And one here, the black cap one, is they're getting ready to move forward on, so. Commissioner, is that? That's
More than fine.
Seems like what you were saying too.
Yeah, the only other question I've got, just for the record, is, I mean, I probably have more than that, but in these different documents, Fremont is spelled a couple of different ways. Do we want to clean that up? It's spelled as Fremont and Fremont.
Didn't order that way? Which spot?
Well, I'm seeing it on the descriptions, on the introduction that Mr. Smith did. He spelled Fremont, F-R-E-E. And then on the legal description, it's F-R-E-M-O-N-T, the way we're accustomed to it.
Yeah, and the report itself is just wrong. The description,
Yeah.
it's like accurate, and I think they were, I don't think,
So,
well, they were, but I'll double check that.
Okay.
so if you had had the order rewritten, have legal counsel, communicate with legal counsel of what our desire is, make sure that he makes sure that that's appropriate, and then we could act on it tomorrow.
Yep, and he has all the information you have, and is he gonna be on the phone tomorrow as well?
No.
Okay, so I'll.
He's available by phone
Okay, I'll
today,
give him a call for sure.
but tomorrow he's not available, so be sure and run that by him. All right?
Great, thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, ordinance number 112, revision. This is, we may want to have legal counsel on the phone, have a little bit of this discussion for today. Commissioner, this is ordinance that we put in the vote to the people. There's a, what I consider a scrivener's error on it.
Yeah, do we need legal counsel for that? I mean, it is real straightforward. I'll defer to you, Chair.
I haven't had the discussion. Denise, did you have any discussion, or Dan, did you any discussion of this? Do we just do this by motion, or do we just clarify?
Per his email, it was a simple omission of a word.
It's just consensus that
Yeah.
intent is to be immediate.
So we could actually act on that today and have it done. like, just being that this is going to go, you probably do it by motion.
Okay.
And then it's.
I'll make a motion on county ordinance number 112 that we had a hearing that was in multiple timeframes over the course of 2 days, that we passed by motion on December 2nd, wasn't that?
Correct.
In Paisley, Oregon, that we insert down in the verbiage in accordance under number 1 of the ordinance. In accordance with the Oregon law, the following are prohibited within Lake County, and I'll list out the 6 items A through F, and then we insert after following are immediately prohibited within Lake County. To clean up any misunderstanding as to the time frame.
I'll second your motion. Motion's been made and seconded to correct the Scrivener's error that was inadvertently left out, and putting the word immediately on number 1 after the word following are. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So we'll remove that from tomorrow's agenda, Denise, that's
Okay.
taken care of. Next item is long-term enterprise zone agreement, Red Rock Resolution 151216. This is whenever we met jointly with the town of Lakeview. This is the resolution that the county needs to do. We held off doing it that night till this meeting, waiting for the draft MOU and agreement from the town on the $10,000 contribution towards the museum as a build. So this is just doing our final resolution, and we'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Did I miss anything there?
Nope.
You think of? Now the ever popular Ladder of Opportunity Grant RFQ land purchase award from Denise Thorstead.
This is gonna be really short because I'm still waiting for some information to come from, another, agency on vehicles that they use. We did receive 2 bids for additional vans that we need to purchase per ODOT. So I'm hoping to have the information that I need tomorrow.
Okay, so if you do receive that information, there will be action items tomorrow.
That is correct.
Okay, if you don't receive the information, we'll continue on.
Correct.
All right. No department updates?
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do have department
Well,
updates.
before you go there, we passed over the grant of easement for access, is that just tomorrow?
Very first part of the meeting said that Dave will do the presentation tomorrow, and he's out of town today. So, yes, we did. Good catch, but I was all over it accidentally.
Okay.
Department updates, Denise.
So I have an update for IT. I just needed to let you gentlemen know that Microsoft, in their amazing world that they live in, they now have a free upgrade for their operating system of 2010 versus what we've been using, which is 2007. It is a different program look, so it's going to require some training for our employees and also some techie work behind the scenes, confirming with different vendors such as Manatron, Wayne County, Helion, all those little programs that everybody uses to make sure that they are operable under 2010. Because once we switch those, we could have some hiccups. But Microsoft will no longer support 2007 or 2003 as of July 31st, which means no more updates. We'd basically be in the same position we were with our XP machines. They would be basically useless.
What date did you use?
July 31st?
Of 16.
Correct. If we wait and we do not do our upgrades until after that July 31st offer from Microsoft to do it free, it's about $200 per PC, so we just want to keep that in mind. I did speak with Brad Brown and crew yesterday, to kind of figure out how to roll it out, and we're thinking that we need to do trainings, kind of like we did for our IT policy, prior to installation of 2010 programming, just so that everybody can kind of eyeball it beforehand, because it is different. It's not as bad as 2008, but it is not fun. So we'll keep you posted on how that's gonna play out.
So Denise, the compatibility potential issues, when are we gonna hear on those? I mean, it sounds like they got us putting a rock in our hard spot.
They sure do. Josh and Dean and crew are actually, they have a list. We worked up a list yesterday on who needs to be contacted, and they're gonna have to go pretty much PC by PC and look at what programs each individual employee uses. It's gonna be very time consuming, unfortunately. We are, just as a heads up, going to run into a big problem in the assessor's office with the Manatron program, because it has to operate on 2007. So Manatron is really, really, really pushing everybody to move away from the program that we are using. We've been a little resistant to that because it's a different program. We are the only ones that we know of that are still under contract with Wayne County for operation of and support for our Manatron system. Upgrading that is about $150,000. We've talked about that over the last couple of years. We've talked about we need to get money in reserves for that. It's a discussion we need to have with tech and the assessor and whatnot, but we could run into some big problems in that department in the near future if we don't start playing by the rules, even on the new program.
I've had a little bit of this discussion, but we as a board, for discussion today, but I think what we need to do is use our IT people, bring our department heads together, and if we want to call it a staff meeting or do it during a work session, and for our IT professionals to tell us where we need to get to, along with our department heads, elected officials, because we're down to crunch time.
We are. We're running out of time.
And we use the assessor's office as an example. If it's going to be $150,000 cost and we have not started setting a reserve aside for that, it's going to be quite a hit during our budget time. So I'm recommending that we ask Brad Brown and others to lead the conversation of where the county needs to be with our employees and why we need to be there. And I'm not the techie person, as I've talked to Denise, but
And I'm not
I have to rely on their guidance.
I can only relay what they relate to me, so I want to understand of what they relate.
Commissioner, what do you think about asking them sometime in January to come?
Oh, I think it's an excellent idea, because there will be questions or comments or different opinions. We need the professionals that are not just what we receive from them for information, but to answer the unknowns.
So that would give us a 6-month window, basically, for the one upgrade you're talking about that need to be done, but a cost saving. Plus look at vision of where we need to get to for operations of the county.
Correct. Okay, I'll get that scheduled.
Let's go after the mid-January sometime.
Okay.
What do you think, Commissioner?
Yeah.
Okay. One other item, as you may or may not be aware, our 2 Explorers that we ordered for this year are here. The juvenile department has transferred from our Jeep to their new vehicle. The Jeep has gone through the racks at the local dealer to get the oil changed and make sure everything's running appropriately. So if you're ready to make that donation to the senior center for their Meals on Wheels program, that vehicle is ready. I would strongly encourage the board to be the ones to drive it over there and say, here you go. I'm very proud of you boys. I just wanted to say that. I think that was a very wonderful donation to the senior center.
So would you make a time whenever all 3 commissioners could be at the senior
Sure.
center and present that, check our schedules and present?
Okay. Okay, I will do that. I know you're floored that I told you I was proud of you. Don't let go of your head.
This is the liaison to the senior center,
Yeah.
so he needs to
There is
be.
no liaison anymore,
Yes, there is.
just on paper.
No.
I'll
So-
walk over.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of us showing our support to them. And yes, I would like to, all three commissioners be involved in it. And our fleet manager that also supported needs to be involved in it, so thank you for your support.
I'll help Jimmy take the picture. That work for you? I'll let you know what we can schedule for that,
Okay.
make sure you're there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any more updates?
I am done, believe it or not.
I'm wore out. You have any updates?
Just this Friday, I'm gonna be up in Redmond. Some of the members of the collaborative are gonna be chatting on some federal agency assistance stuff. I had met with some of them last week up there. This is gonna be a fairly short meeting from about 10 to 2:30. I'm just gonna go Friday morning, come back that evening.
All right, I think I've covered part of mine with the museum thing and other things I've been working on. So.
Well, I will say, and I know we've talked about this off and on, and I just sent Wes Wood from Senator Whiting's office an email about scheduling time. Well, two things, since I'm talking about scheduling. I sent Jean Stevens with FedEx email this morning. She had proposed some times, and we're gonna try and get together at 1 tomorrow afternoon. If you can get us through a regular board meeting that quickly. 1 PM. And we're gonna be chatting about FedEx coming on site as we have talked before. They're doing a story on the Red Rock biofuel, and they, the company, FedEx, the portfolio of energy products. They're big time into renewables, and as a participant in the future product of Red Rock, they're gonna be, once again, known information, contracting for 3 million gallons a year from 2017 through 2024. That's the current contract, of which one blended, it'll be 6 million gallons of Jet A fuel. And so Jeannie wants to take some pictures, and, you know, I think their real desire is to get out and look at the product itself that's gonna be utilized, this wood waste, this contributor to large scale, high cost, very severe fires. And I reminded her it's winter here. We might be able to get out and drive around the local streets, but getting to the woods might be a struggle. So anyway, we'll kind of firm that up tomorrow, exactly what she hopes to accomplish here. And then going back to.
I see a road trip on a snowmobile for you.
Yeah, right. Going back to Senator Wyden's staff in DC, Westlook is kind of in charge of the renewable program. And we've had discussions last week with Sarah Bittleman and Wes and a couple other folks on them getting some serious consideration in the new policies they're trying to develop around the definitions of renewable energy products to get our federal forest lands, our federal lands period, to qualify by definition excuse me, renewable energy, which will be incredibly beneficial to, first and foremost, as we always discuss, the forest health, and locally for the company to have an even greater surety of product available for the next several decades to produce the biofuel. So I'll update you tomorrow maybe on where we're at with that.
Can I ask you one question before we close out? Senator Merkley's office, I don't know if you guys saw my email or not, they scheduled time with us the morning of January 6th. That is a regular session meeting.
I have not seen the email January.
Did you send us an email?
Last week, when you called.
Really?
I never.
You didn't get it either?
I didn't get it.
I'll go back through and make sure it went through. Anyway, they reserved this room for at 10 o'clock for their pre-meeting, and Memorial Hall or actually this room again for 10:30 for his town hall. So I don't know, you need to give me some direction on what you want to do with that. If we want to do a late start, maybe they will change their dates. I did let her know it was a regular session date.
We can change our start date, our start time, would be fine with me, what do you think, Commissioner?
Well, I don't think they watch the Lake County Examiner YouTube, so I will say, sorry, Jimmy. Depends upon what he's going to talk to us about. I'm fine with whatever.
Yeah, well, I would like to accommodate them.
Okay.
Their town halls usually run about an hour and a half, so we might, we could do two different things. We could start ours early at 9 o'clock and then continue it after recess and continue it afterwards. Or we could just start in the afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I think I need to check my calendar. I don't think I'm here that day.
The 6th of January?
Yeah.
You may be chairman. Okay, yeah, let's.
You're gonna be sorry, that's when we decide we need funds. Okay,
There being nothing further to come before us, we will adjourn at 5 minutes after 11.